Deuteronomy, the wilderness. We'll be in Deuteronomy 2, verse 1. We finished chapter 1 last week. This one starts, Deuteronomy 2:1 says, "Then we turned back and set out towards the wilderness along the route to the Red Sea. As the Lord had directed me for a long time, we made our way around the hill country of Seir." This first part of Deuteronomy, first few chapters, are a rehash of what has occurred. And he's building up to the point where he begins to start talking about the laws and so on that are to be instituted. So we're this chapter and at least another chapter is going to be kind of a rehash of where they've been. He's kind of rehearsing what had happened before, and he's talking to them. A lot of it, he's talking to them like it was them that was there, but it's not. It was 40 years earlier. The people that were there at this particular area. So he says, for a long time, he says here, he says the route to the Red Sea. So the question I want to start with is it the Red Sea or is it the Sea of Reeds? Which is correct? Because you hear, pardon me? Well, it doesn't matter, but people want to argue about things. So I want to try to clarify this to some degree. And there is a way that we can reason through this. So I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. The Hebrew phrase Yam Suf literally means Sea of Reeds. And that's the term that's used there instead of Red Sea. But in the 3rd century, I've talked about the Septuagint. When you see it abbreviated, it'll say LXX, which means 70. It's the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. In the 3rd century, they rendered it a word that means Red Sea. So every other translation after it, including the King James Version, all of them had Red Sea. There's a few translations today that have Sea of Reeds. And I put a note there also that there's an area there at the Red Sea where it has reeds along there. So they're thinking that people could have referred to it, the Red Sea, that area of the Red Sea, as the Sea of Reeds. So, is it important as to which name is used? No. Did a miracle take place? Yes. Now here's where the rub comes. Some scholars propose that the Reed Sea was some of the shallow lakes and shallow sections up to, you remember, where they came across the Suez Canal is there now. There was some solid ground, there were some small streams, there were some little lakes, there were different things that connected it together. And some of them have said that they crossed through on this particular land, and they didn't cross through any deep sea. They crossed through this ankle deep or knee deep water, and that's what explained the miracle there. Well, there was a little problem there. Even greater miracle occurred then because all of Pharaoh's army was drowned in knee-deep water. So which is a greater miracle? They opened up a part of the sea, or that very shallow body of water rose up enough to kill all of Pharaoh's army and drown all of his horses and drown all of his men. The thing is, people have been trying to explain away the miracles of the Bible for ages, ever since I can remember, way before I ever came along. But regardless of what you want to think, there was a miracle there. There's archaeological findings and different things that point to the fact that this did occur. So you can use archaeological findings to prove one thing, or you can use it to prove another, because there was none of us here that were alive back then, so far as I know. And none of these scholars And none of these experts were alive back then, and none of them know. The only written account we have of it is this, is what's in the Bible. So let's stick with the one that's written. Then we turned back and set out toward the wilderness along the route of the Red Sea, or Sea of Reeds, whichever one you want to call it, as the Lord had directed me. For a long time we made our way around the hill country of Seir. So I got two sets of maps I want us to look at, and it has to do with a couple of things we're talking about here. And one is talking about the area up here, the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds, or whatever you want to call it. You can see the way it looked back then, that you have some that's dry land, some of it that's not. And this particular one, this shows the route that they took as here and came across here, across the Gulf of Aqaba. There's some that say that's not where it crossed further up there, and they came down here and came around this way. Nobody knows for sure. All we know is they got from there, they spent 40 years in the wilderness, and they wound up here. That much we know for many different reasons. But anyway, that gives you an idea. So when you're talking about the Red Sea, you're talking about the Gulf of Suez and the Gulf of Aqaba, which is part of the Red Sea. So if you crossed any part of this, you're crossing the Red Sea, or Sea of Reeds, whatever you want to call it. You're crossing the Red Sea. So if they crossed the arm up there, that's still a deep body of water. Could you walk across New River? No. And I've.
But if you stepped on those sandbanks, you could go in up to your knee, because I've done that.
And I've seen it frozen over, where you could have people walk across on the ice. Not a smart thing to do, but they did. I've seen it frozen over, like I've seen Catherine's Lake frozen over, and the boys are out there in their go-kart spinning around in circles out in the middle of Catherine's Lake. So there's things that can happen. But regardless of which way we look at it, there was a body of water there, and whether it was the size of Catherine's Lake, it's where they went across or not, it would take a miracle to open it up and let 1 million people walk across it and to dry it off.
Just as an example, you have ever walked across marshland.
Yeah.
You realize he had a wall of water, because he had to walk the water out of that sand.
Yep. So, and we see it as the water opened up, they walked through, the Egyptian army came across, and it came back in. And if you just take any body of water and you open it up, what's the bottom going to be like? So it said the wind blew and it dried it out and made it where they could walk across. There was a lot that was involved there. Anyway, no matter how you look at it, they got from over here to over here by traveling down here. One way that, no matter which course you want to take, I always felt like it was the one that came down here, because the way certain scriptures are reading, the way it talks about. And keep in mind, they wandered around in this wilderness for 40 years. For 40 years. You'd have to camp in one place a long time. You'd have to travel in circles some. There's all kinds of things you'd have to do to stay here for 40 years, even back then with walking everywhere. So we don't know what all they did and exactly where they went, because it doesn't tell us. You know the reason it doesn't tell us? It's not important. That's not it. The important part is they got from here. Important part is God promised Abraham that his descendant would have land over here. And that was part of the covenant, was where this land is. And so God was going to get these people from over here back over here to form the nation that he told them was going to be there. And if God decides to do something, guess what? It gets done. Now, we talked about in the scripture there about the land called Seir. If you see over to the far left there, it says Seir, S-E-I-R, Seir, in the land of Edom. And it says that they had gone around there, and now they're going to travel back through this area, and he's going to talk more about that. This is just a larger map, so you can see that that part is down here, and up here is where they crossed to get over into the promised land. So they had to get all the way around here up to here, because the first time didn't work out very well with their fathers and grandfathers and the warriors of that particular time. So this area was down here. And notice also an area up there called Moab, because we'll get to that in just a second. We have Moab, we have Edom, we have Seir in that particular area. That's where they were at this particular time. Second verse. Then the Lord said to me, you have made your way around this hill country long enough. Now turn north. Give the people these orders. You're about to pass through the territory of your relatives, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. They will be afraid of you, but be very careful. Do not provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. I have given Esau the hill country of Seir as his own. So, when we're talking about in the Bible, we think about the promised land. The covenant was made with Abraham, and God gave land to the nation of Israel, the children of Israel. He gave land to them, and did he give land to other people as well? Did he give inheritance to other people as well? He did. And here's one of them where he's talking about, he said that he gave this to Esau, and because he gave it to Esau, this is the kind of God that we serve. He gave it to Esau 400 years back. But he said, because I gave it to Esau, you're not going to touch that land. You're not going to have anything to do with it. You stay out of that land. Because I made a promise. You are to pay them in silver for the food you eat and the water you drink. So in other words, you can drink water from there, you can eat food from there, but you're going to buy it. You're not going to take anything. And keep in mind, this is a lot of people traveling through here, but he told them, you travel around this area and don't disturb them. You can't have anything to do with them. The Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. When they left Egypt, how much livestock did they leave with? We know, but when you watch the Ten Commandments and stuff like that, it's like they just took off with the clothes on their back, but they had other stuff with them as well. But he says, now this is a 40-year period of time he's talking about. He says, the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. God has blessed you. He's put you out here in the wilderness. You have been fed. You've had something to eat. You've had water to drink. You've been able to take care of yourself. We don't know what their living arrangements were, what kind of tents they lived in or huts or anything. I have no idea. But God took care of them for 40 years. He has watched over your journey through the vast wilderness. These 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you, and you have not lacked anything. And they were so thankful for what they got. God has taken such good care of us. They were easy to get along with for all that 40 years, and never complained or grumbled, never said anything about it. They were good folks. Verse 8. And we went on past our relatives, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. We turned from the Arabah road, which comes up from Elath and Ezion Geber, and traveled along the desert road to Moab. Then the Lord said to me, do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any part of their land. I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. So he gave it to who? He gave it to Lot. Now Lot was an upstanding character that to give something to, give land to. And Lot had, I think I put it on here some way. Anyway, Lot had two sons. Who were his two sons? Hang on just a second. He had one by each one of his daughters. Now this is Lot. God is giving land to Lot and his inheritance after him, and they can't go in this land. God is a merciful God. So I cannot imagine trying to draw out that family tree. My dad is my grandfather. It's strange. He says, I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. So, we've got, and I put it down here, the land that he'd given to different people besides the children of Israel. He gave Seir to Esau. He gave Moab to Lot. Did he give land to other people? We don't know. It doesn't tell us. It doesn't say who he did or who he didn't. The only people why is it talking about this group of people? Because this is the Bible which is written about the covenant made with Abraham that came from Adam and Eve to Abraham through Noah to Adam and Eve, and a covenant that was made with him that would get Jesus into the world. So he makes a covenant people, and that's the reason we're talking about them. We don't know about this. So was there anybody over here in the Americas at that time? Don't know. Was there people down further over? I don't know. Were there some up north? Don't know. Did God give them any land? We don't know. Why don't we know? Because it's irrelevant to what we're studying. We're studying the what? The Bible. And it has to do with the covenant with Abraham. So, look back at the maps again, and you can see Moab and the land of Seir, Edom. Both of this, they could not bother them. They could not harm them. They could not take any of that land. So they had to travel around here and go up here past the Dead Sea to cross across up here to get over into the Promised Land. I couldn't get one map that had all that on it, that had it spelled out like I wanted it, so I put it in 4 maps. The Emites used to live there, a people strong and numerous, as tall as the Anakites. Like the Anakites, they too were considered the Rephaites. But the Moabites called them Emites. Horites used to live in Seir, but the descendants of Esau drove them out. They destroyed the Horites from before them and settled in their place, just as Israel did in the land the Lord gave them as their possession. And the Lord said, now get up and cross the Zered valley. So we crossed the valley. So what is all this telling us? Pardon me? And there's a lot we won't know about them. We can learn some about them. We have some archaeological proof and so on. But here's something else I want us to look at and want us to consider. We're approaching the 250th birthday of our land. And people will say, we stole this land from, quote, the Native Americans, as if there was one homogeneous group called the Native Americans. So when somebody says, you stole this land from the Native Americans, you say, which tribe? Because they were not all one tribe. They were not all one people. That just like it's talking about here. You see what it says, that the Anakites, they too are considered the Rephaites. Who are these? Who are they talking about here? I'll talk about them in just a second. But it says, but each one of these, you can see this group conquered this group. This one conquered this group. This one took this land. That's the way the world was for century after century after century after century, is this land, this people would take over this people. This especially ticks me off because we are approaching our 250th birthday. But when people start talking about the negative things about us, and they go back and they said, the first Thanksgiving, 1621, the Pilgrims, it says you see these peaceful picture with these Native Americans there, what we always called Indians, but there's Native Americans there, and they were peacefully eating with these pilgrims who were there, and that's not the way it was. They ate together for a couple of days. It was actually 3 days, I think it was. They spent together, and they played games. They did all kinds of things together. And it said then they immediately went back to fighting each other, and the Europeans abused the Native Americans. Now, go back and read history. I just want these people to read some history. In 1621, wasn't William Bradford. It was the one before him. Edward Winslow, I think, was the governor to begin with. He signed a peace treaty with the chief of this particular tribe in 1621. Do you know how long that peace treaty lasted? This chief died in died 40 years later. 40 years later, and that peace treaty held until from 1621 to 1675, when the King Philip War broke out. Does that sound like they were at each other's throats all that time? People are just making up things to make us look like we're horrible, like they say, we Europeans. I'm not a European. Are you European? I'm American. My ancestors, some of them from this place, some of them from that place. This is just like it's talking about here. Nations, this group of people would come in and take over this place. A stronger group of people would take over another place. Coming back to our history again, one that really burns me up is when they say, we brought blankets over here with smallpox in them. Christopher Columbus did, so he killed all the Indians and killed 90% of the Native Americans that were over here. He had no idea how you spread smallpox. He didn't know you could do it with a blanket, and he didn't know how you could spread it, and they died of disease. That's just like, and I won't name what diseases because some of them are not very nice, that these travelers carried back to Europe, and diseases that were not there, and a bunch of Europeans died from diseases they brought back here. So my point is, when you're looking at this history or any history, people are conquering people. Nation is conquering nation. Nations die out. Other nations take over. That's happened for centuries. That has not changed anywhere in the entire world. It didn't change over here. It didn't change over there. So I didn't mean to get carried away on an aside there, but it bothers me when we're talking about the history of our nation. And just in case anybody wants to know, the natives over here were conquering each other and taking each other and taking prisoners and killing all their people and taking over their land. That was happening over here, and all kinds of things. And it was happening here. What do you think else was going on here? In these... Yeah. What else was going on here? What God were these people worshiping in this place where they were coming into? That's one of them. All kinds of gods that they were worshiping, and they were doing child sacrifice. They were doing all kinds of things. It was not a nice place they were coming into. Same thing occurred in the Americas. They were doing child sacrifice. I have evidence of that with the different tribes over here. So it was worldwide. What I'm saying is, this is a human condition. Without God, human beings will destroy themselves and everybody around them. And that's what's happening. And you see these, one taking of the others. So the Anakites, group mentioned in the Old Testament in the Bible, they were described as tall, powerful warriors who lived in the land of Canaan before the conquest of the Israelites. The Rephaites, there were several passages in the Old Testament that speak of the Rephaim or Rephaites, and the context described them as giants. The name of these people literally means terrible ones. So when you hear about you remember it says the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, and they took them as wives, and they had children, and then it makes a statement, there was giants among them. The word giants was not necessarily giants. It could have been the terrible ones. It could have been, a number of ways that you could define it. But that's what it's talking about here, was a mighty people, a powerful people, a strong people. They were the ones that were in this land. You remember, and I've got the scripture here out of Numbers 13:32. It says, this is the spies saying, the land we passed through to explore is one that devours its inhabitants, and all the people we saw in it are men of great size. We even saw the Nephilim there. The Nephilim was the first term that was used talking about the sons of men and the daughters of women. The Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, come from the Nephilim. To ourselves, we seemed like grasshoppers, and we must have seemed the same to them. And there's people that say, so let's try to get this out of the way in case you've heard this. There are people that say that those descendants of the sons of God and the daughters of men, it was their descendants who were these giants at this time. What's the problem with that? There's a little bit of a problem. And I'll tell you what it is. It's called a flood. So either these men were so big that their head stuck up above the water, or they drowned with everybody else. There was no descendants of them. The only descendants after the flood were from Noah and his sons. Period. So when people talk about stuff like this, you can stop just a minute and we think just a little bit, well, yeah, there's a problem. And that's what the problem is. Just like they say, we haven't been able to find the Garden of Eden. No joke. We haven't been able to find Noah's Ark. No joke. I'd be shocked if you did. If they find it someday, I'd be tickled. Verse 13. And the Lord said, now get up and cross the Zered Valley. So we crossed the valley. Verse 14. 38 years passed from the time we left Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Zered Valley. By then, that entire generation of fighting men had perished from the camp. As the Lord had sworn to them, the Lord's hand was against them until he had completely eliminated them from the camp. So what was the purpose of the 40 years in the wilderness? To kill off that doubting generation, the warriors, if you will, the warriors of that generation. It said warriors here somewhere, and I think that's kind of a loose term to use from them because they didn't want to fight anybody. But the purpose in that was plain and simple. Everybody, every fighting age man, 20 years old and older, had to die off before they could go back. So I guess it's time to pay attention. Numbers 14:1 says this. Then the whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept that night. All the Israelites complained about Moses and Aaron, and the whole community told them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to die by the sword? Our wives and children will become plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? This is the people that Moses is dealing with. This is the one. Now, I'm not God, and God has his reasons. God didn't let Moses in because Moses disobeyed him. I'd have cut Moses some slack. After all these 40 years he's put up with them, I would have cut him some slack. But look what they said. Our wives and our children will be plundered. Who is it going into the promised land? Their children. Because they all died off because they didn't do what God told them to do. Back in Deuteronomy 16th verse. Now when the last of these fighting men, I like it, fighting men, among the people had died, the Lord said to me, today you are to pass by the region of Moab at Ar. When you come to the Ammonites, do not harass them or provoke them to war, for I will not give you possession of any land belonging to the Ammonites. I have given it as possession to the descendants of Lot. And I did put a note down here I thought I had. Lot's sons were Moab and Ben-Ami. And that's where you get the land of Moab and Ammon from, is from those two sons who were Lot's sons and grandsons at the same time.
They're the ones that were worshiping other gods.
Right. Verse 20. That too was considered a land of the Rephaites, who used to live there. But the Ammonites called them, I like this name, Zamzumites. Why don't you name them a short name? Call them Zam or something. They were a people strong and numerous and as tall as the Anakites. The Lord destroyed them from before the Ammonites, who drove them out and settled in their place. Does this sound familiar? It's just like they're talking about Moabites. It says, drove them out. The Lord had done the same for the descendants of Esau, who lived in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites, and before them they drove them out and have lived in their place to this day. And as for the Avites, who lived in the villages as far as Gaza, and that's over in the area where we're still talking about where Gaza is now, the Caphtorites coming out from Caphtor destroyed them and settled in their place. You all got all that down? Got that memorized? Just memorized all those people? That's so we're still going through the same thing, same area. That's what some people forget, is when you're talking about where the land of Israel is today, where Gaza is today, where Egypt is, those lands are and Syria, all that are thousands upon thousands. They've had people living there for thousands upon thousands of years. It's not like we think it's like here or in Europe, but even Europe's a lot older than us. Verse 24, set out now and cross the Arnon Gorge. See, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his country. Begin to take possession of it and engage him in battle. Now here he just starts with having them to engage somebody in battle to fight him. Does he tell them at this point to wipe everything out, men, women, children, dog, cats, sheep, goats, and everything? No. What he says is, at this particular point, it's not every place, not every people that they came across did God tell them to wipe them all out. And if you check, you'll find out that they weren't all wiped out, and they're still, we'll talk about that when we get to it, so we'll get past that. Begin to take possession of it and engage in battle. Engage him in battle. This very day I will begin to put the terror and fear of you on all the nations under heaven. They will hear reports of you and will tremble and be in anguish because of you. So I went to Joshua to give you an idea of how that worked. In Joshua 2:8 it says, before the men fell asleep, she went. Who's she that we're talking about here? Do you know? This is Rahab the harlot. I still always remember these spies came in to spy out the town. And the first house they go to is the prostitute's house. That still raises questions to me, but that's the place where they went. And so that's who they're talking to. Before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings who you completely destroyed across Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. So what happened before, they didn't see this, but God saw this, and God knew this. This was going to send a reputation ahead of them. And remember, as soon as they crossed the Jordan River, that's when they ran into Jericho, and that's where they were at this particular time. And she says, the fear of you has preceded you. We've heard about all this stuff. We've heard about your God. Back to Deuteronomy 26, verse 26. So I sent messengers with an offering of peace to King Sihon of Heshbon from the wilderness of Kemoth, saying, let us travel through your land. We will keep strictly to the highway. We will not turn to the right or the left. You can sell us food in exchange for silver, so we may eat, and give us water for silver, so we may drink. Only let us travel through on foot. Reasonable? Just as the descendants of Esau who live in Seir did for us, and the Moabites who live in Ar, until we cross the Jordan into the land the Lord our God is giving us. But King Sihon of Heshbon would not let us travel through his land, for the Lord your God had made his spirit stubborn and his heart obstinate, in order to hand him over to you, as has now taken place. So they came in to make a deal. He wouldn't make a place. He got his troops together and said, I'll run you off. And he didn't get run off. He wound up in trouble. Then the Lord said to me, see, I have begun to give Sihon and his land to you. Begin to take possession of it. So Sihon and his whole army came out against us for battle at Jahaz. The Lord our God handed him over to us, and we defeated him, his sons, his whole army. At that time we captured all his cities and completely destroyed the people of every city, including the women and children. We left no survivors. Does that sound a little like overkill? Did they literally kill all the women and children? Did they really kill? I'm just reading you what it says. No, you couldn't leave your enemies behind you, plus the fact you have a people that are worshiping foreign gods that are not gods, and if they intermingle with the children of Israel, there's going to be a problem. We left no survivors. We took only the livestock and the spoil from the cities we captured as plunder for ourselves. There was no city that was inaccessible to us. From Aurora, let me try that again. That's Aurora on the rim of the Arnon Valley, along with the city in the valley, even as far as Gilead. The Lord our God gave everything to us, but you did not go near the Ammonites' land, all along the bank of the Jabbok River, the cities of the hill country, or any of the place the Lord our God had forbidden. Did God tell them to wipe out all the Canaanites? Did they wipe out all the Canaanites? You don't have to answer that question. That's a question for us to ponder on as we come back the next time. Now, do you have any questions or comments?